It's 0347 hours, 600 feet beneath the Pacific Ocean, and the sonar operator's blood runs cold. Through his headphones comes a sound that every submariner dreads, the high-pitched whine of an incoming torpedo bearing down on their position at 45 knots. In the attack center, alarm bells shatter the submarine's quiet hum as red lights bathe the control room in an ominous glow. The crew has perhaps 90 seconds before 650 pounds of high explosives tear through their pressure hull, sending 130 souls to the crushing depths below. This is the nightmare scenario that submarine crews train for relentlessly, but hope never to face. Survival below the waves relies primarily on stealth, but, if detected, countermeasures may be the only shot at making it home alive. Unlike surface warfare, where ships can call for backup or retreat to friendly ports, submarines under attack face a stark reality. There's nowhere to run, no cavalry coming to the rescue, and no margin for error in the most hostile environment on Earth. The submarine's 6 standardized alarm systems can signal different emergencies, but the collision alarm takes absolute priority, because nothing matters more than avoiding catastrophic damage to the pressure hull that keeps the ocean from rushing in with lethal force. When that alarm sounds during an attack, every system, every training drill, and every split-second decision made by the crew will determine whether they survive the next few minutes. Modern submarine warfare happens at speeds and depths that would have been unimaginable to the submarine pioneers of World War II. Today's torpedoes can track targets using advanced sonar guidance, adjust their course mid-flight, and detonate with enough force to break a submarine's back. Yet the human element remains unchanged: courage, training, and precise teamwork under the most extreme pressure imaginable. Today, we're taking you inside the most dangerous moments in submarine warfare, revealing the exact procedures, split-second decisions, and life-or-death technologies that determine survival when submariners face an attack deep under the ocean. This is how 130 sailors fight for their lives in a steel tube surrounded by crushing darkness. The moment sonar detects an incoming torpedo, the submarine transforms from a quiet underwater vessel into a precision war machine operating at breakneck speed. The officer of the deck's voice cuts through the alarm bells with words that every submariner has drilled countless times. General quarters! General quarters! All hands man your battle stations! His announcement booms through the submarine's loudspeaker system, reaching every compartment from the torpedo room to the engine spaces in seconds. What happens next is choreographed chaos. Throughout the submarine, 130 crew members instantly abandon whatever they were doing, eating meals, sleeping in their racks, conducting routine maintenance, and sprint toward their predetermined battle stations. The traditional Navy call guides their movement: forward and up to starboard, down and aft to port. This simple phrase prevents deadly collisions in narrow passageways as sailors flow through the submarine like water, finding its level. In the attack center, the submarine's nerve center located amidships, the most critical personnel converge within 45 seconds. The commanding officer, who may have been asleep in his stateroom moments before, rushes to his position at the periscope stand. The executive officer takes his station at the plotting table, while the fire control coordinator slides into his seat at the sophisticated targeting computers. Each man knows that his individual performance in the next few minutes could determine whether the submarine survives or becomes another statistic in the dangerous world of underwater warfare. The sonar supervisor, arguably the most important person during the first moments of an attack, remains glued to his console, tracking the incoming threat while simultaneously searching for the submarine that fired it. His trained ears can distinguish between the acoustic signature of different torpedo types, determining whether they're facing a wire-guided torpedo controlled by the enemy submarine, or an acoustic homing torpedo that will chase their submarine's sound signature until impact. Meanwhile, sailors throughout the submarine secure equipment that could become deadly projectiles during violent evasive maneuvers. Coffee cups, tools, loose papers, and personal items are stowed or tied down in seconds. The crew knows that when the submarine begins emergency maneuvering, anything not secured will become a weapon flying through the compartments at crushing speeds. The submarine's battle stations crew practices these transitions during routine drills, but nothing compares to the adrenaline surge of a real attack. Training records show that experienced crews can achieve full battle stations manning within 90 seconds, but during actual combat, fear and urgency often compress that timeline even further. Every sailor understands that speed isn't just about efficiency, it's about survival. In the engine room, reactor operators prepare for emergency power demands that could push the nuclear plant to its limits. The submarine may need to accelerate rapidly, change depth dramatically, or perform evasive maneuvers that require precise coordination between the reactor plant and the submarine's propulsion systems. With battle stations manned, the submarine's survival now depends on the precise analysis happening at the sonar stations. The sonar technicians, wearing sound-powered headphones that isolate them from the submarine's internal noise, listen intently to the acoustic signature of death approaching through the water. Modern submarine sonar systems can detect torpedoes at ranges exceeding 10,000 yards, but detection alone isn't enough. The crew must quickly determine the torpedo's type, speed, and guidance system to have any hope of defeating it. The sonar supervisor's voice cuts through the tension. Torpedo in the water, bearing 045, estimated range 8,000 yards, high-speed screws. In submarine warfare, this announcement triggers a cascade of rapid calculations. At 45 knots, a typical torpedo speed, the weapon will cover the distance to the submarine in approximately 6 minutes. But modern wake-homing torpedoes can reach speeds of 65 knots, compressing that timeline to just over 4 minutes, barely enough time to implement effective countermeasures. The fire control team immediately begins plotting the torpedo's approach vector while simultaneously searching for the submarine that launched it. Using sophisticated acoustic processing systems, they analyze the torpedo's sound signature to determine its guidance method. Wire-guided torpedoes, controlled by the firing submarine through a thin copper wire, follow precise steering commands from their launching platform. These weapons are deadly accurate, but vulnerable to countermeasures that can sever their control wire. Acoustic homing torpedoes, by contrast, use their own sonar to track the submarine's noise signature and can continue pursuing their target even if the launching submarine is destroyed. In the attack center, the commanding officer faces one of the most critical decisions in submarine warfare: whether to shoot back immediately or focus entirely on evasion. Navy doctrine is clear. If the firing submarine can be located quickly enough, the best defense may be offense. "Shoot torpedo back at firing sub, fire down the path of incoming torpedo," reads one tactical manual. This aggressive response can force the enemy submarine to take evasive action, potentially disrupting its ability to guide wire-controlled torpedoes. The weapons control panel, normally dark and quiet, now glows with ready indicators as torpedo tubes are flooded and outer doors are prepared for opening. Each Mark 48 torpedo in the submarine's arsenal weighs 3,695 pounds and carries a 650-pound warhead capable of breaking another submarine in half. The fire control computers calculate intercept courses automatically, but the final decision to fire rests entirely with the commanding officer. Meanwhile, the submarine's navigation team plots emergency escape routes, identifying the deepest water in the area where the submarine might find thermal layers to hide in or underwater terrain features that could mask its acoustic signature. The ocean floor topology becomes a three-dimensional battlefield where depth, temperature gradients, and sound propagation characteristics can mean the difference between survival and destruction. Time compresses as the torpedo closes the distance. Every second brings the weapon approximately 76 feet closer, and the crew knows that once it reaches terminal guidance range, typically the final 1,000 yards, their options for survival become dramatically limited. As the torpedo enters its final approach phase, the submarine's survival depends on a sophisticated array of countermeasures that represent decades of underwater warfare evolution. The AN/SLQ-25 system, the submarine's primary torpedo defense mechanism, springs into action automatically upon detecting an incoming homing torpedo. This advanced countermeasure system amplifies and returns sonar pings from approaching torpedoes, creating false acoustic targets designed to confuse the weapon's guidance system. The countermeasures officer's hands move rapidly across his console, selecting from an array of defensive options. Acoustic countermeasures generate precisely calibrated noise signatures that can deceive torpedo sonar guidance systems, making the submarine appear to be somewhere it isn't. These sophisticated decoys, some weighing up to 30 pounds and measuring 5 inches in diameter, are ejected from special launch tubes and programmed to mimic the submarine's acoustic signature while following a different trajectory. The commanding officer's voice cuts through the controlled chaos. "Launch countermeasures, all stop rig for silent running." The submarine's massive nuclear reactor, which normally provides power for propulsion and all onboard systems, is suddenly throttled back to minimum levels. The crew knows that every piece of rotating machinery, every pump, every fan creates noise that could guide the torpedo to its target. Even the submarine's ventilation system is temporarily shut down, leaving 130 men breathing recycled air while they wait to see if their countermeasures will save their lives. Simultaneously, the submarine begins violent evasive maneuvers that test both the crew's endurance and the vessel's structural limits. The diving officer orders emergency deep, sending the submarine plummeting toward its maximum operating depth at angles that can reach 30 degrees down. Sailors throughout the boat grab handholds and brace themselves as loose objects slide and crash despite earlier securing efforts. The submarine's hull groans under the stress of rapid depth changes and sharp turns that generate G-forces comparable to fighter aircraft maneuvers. One of the most desperate evasive tactics involves deliberately creating cavitation, normally avoided at all costs because it creates an enormous acoustic signature. By rapidly accelerating and then executing sharp turns, the submarine's propeller creates cavitation bubbles that burst with explosive sounds, potentially overwhelming the torpedo's acoustic sensors. This maneuver, called making a knuckle, creates a wall of noise and turbulent water that can mask the submarine's true position and confuse incoming weapons. The submarine may also deploy submersible decoys directly onto the torpedo's predicted path. These sophisticated devices, launched from special tubes, follow programmed courses designed to deflect the weapon away from the submarine. The appropriate countermeasure deployment and evasive maneuvers must be precisely timed. Too early, and the torpedo can adjust course. Too late, and the countermeasures become ineffective. In the sonar room, technicians track the torpedo's response to their countermeasures, listening for changes in its acoustic signature that might indicate successful deception. The torpedo's sonar pings become increasingly frantic as it searches for its target, and the crew holds its collective breath, knowing that the next few seconds will determine their fate. If countermeasures fail and the torpedo maintains its attack course, the submarine must transition from defense to offense, while simultaneously preparing for the possibility of catastrophic damage. The weapons control officer receives authorization to open the outer doors of flooded torpedo tubes at critical range, a procedure that creates its own acoustic signature, but represents the submarine's last chance to neutralize the threat. The outer door opening mechanism operates under enormous water pressure, requiring precise hydraulic systems that must function flawlessly despite the submarine's violent maneuvering. The fire control team executes what submariners call an end-around tactic, attempting to gain position ahead of the enemy submarine for an optimal attack angle. This maneuver requires the submarine to outrun and outmaneuver its pursuer while maintaining a firing solution. A three-dimensional chess game played at lethal speeds in the crushing depths. The submarine's nuclear propulsion system can push the vessel to speeds exceeding 25 knots submerged, but sustained high-speed operations create heat signatures and noise that could attract additional threats. Throughout the submarine, damage control teams prepare for the worst-case scenario. These specially trained sailors position themselves at critical damage control stations, ready to respond to flooding, fire, or loss of systems within seconds of impact. Emergency breathing apparatus is distributed to key personnel, while watertight doors are partially secured to limit flooding potential without completely isolating compartments. The damage control officer continuously updates flooding scenarios on his plotting board, calculating the submarine's survival chances based on different impact locations. If the submarine suffers a hit, the crew's training shifts to damage assessment and emergency ascent procedures. Ballast tank operations become critical as the submarine may need to emergency blow to the surface despite the tactical disadvantage of exposure. The ballast control panel, normally used for routine depth changes, transforms into a life-saving system capable of forcing compressed air into the ballast tanks with enough pressure to overcome significant flooding. Emergency surfacing from combat depths can bring a submarine from 400 feet to the surface in less than 2 minutes, a desperate maneuver that subjects the crew to rapid pressure changes and potential decompression injuries. Communication protocols during combat emphasize absolute radio silence to prevent enemy direction-finding equipment from tracking the submarine's location. Even after successful evasion, the submarine may maintain communication blackout for hours while executing stealth recovery procedures designed to disappear completely from enemy detection systems. The submarine's ability to vanish after combat, becoming acoustically invisible while moving to safe waters, often determines long-term survival more than the initial engagement outcome. The crew's training emphasizes that surviving an underwater attack requires perfect coordination between offense, defense, and damage control. Every sailor aboard understands that individual expertise means nothing without flawless teamwork under extreme pressure. Their survival depends not just on advanced technology, but on the human ability to function as a unified combat system when death approaches through the crushing darkness of the deep ocean. As we surface from this harrowing journey into underwater combat, the extraordinary demands placed on submarine crews become undeniably clear. In those critical minutes, when a torpedo streaks through the water at 45 knots carrying 650 pounds of high explosives toward their steel sanctuary, 130 sailors must execute procedures with a precision that allows no margin for error. The difference between survival and catastrophe often comes down to decisions made in seconds, reactions trained through thousands of hours of drilling, and the courage to function normally when normal circumstances cease to exist. The technological evolution of submarine warfare has created a deadly game of move and counter-move that spans decades of innovation. From the crude acoustic decoys of World War II, metal objects banged together to create noise, to today's sophisticated AN/SLQ-25 systems that can digitally manipulate sonar returns, each advancement in defensive technology has prompted corresponding improvements in torpedo design. Modern wake-homing torpedoes that can reach 65 knots represent a quantum leap from the steam-powered weapons of earlier eras, yet the fundamental challenge remains unchanged. Detect, evade, and survive in an environment where a single mistake proves fatal. The human element in submarine combat defies easy categorization. These sailors voluntarily accept duty aboard vessels where an enemy attack offers no opportunity for evacuation, no chance to abandon ship in any meaningful way, and no rescue from outside forces. When battle stations sound 600 feet underwater, every crew member understands that their individual performance directly impacts not just their own survival, but the lives of every shipmate aboard. The sonar technician who accurately classifies an incoming torpedo, the countermeasures operator who times his defensive systems perfectly, the diving officer who executes emergency maneuvers without exceeding the submarine's structural limits. Each plays a role that could determine the outcome. Perhaps most remarkably, submarine crews train constantly for scenarios they hope never to encounter. The drills are relentless: torpedo evasion, damage control, emergency ascent procedures, and weapons firing exercises that prepare them for combat they may never see. Yet this training creates muscle memory and automatic responses that can mean survival when adrenaline and fear threaten to overwhelm rational decision-making. The psychological toll of submarine warfare extends beyond the immediate threat of enemy action. These sailors must maintain peak performance while knowing that their profession places them in one of the most dangerous environments ever inhabited by humans. The ocean itself, crushing, cold, and utterly unforgiving, represents a constant threat that makes every emergency more perilous than comparable situations on land or in the air. In the silent depths where submarine warfare unfolds, American sailors continue to demonstrate that advanced technology alone cannot guarantee survival. Victory belongs to those who combine cutting-edge systems with flawless teamwork, split-second decision-making, and the uncommon courage required to fight for their lives in the abyss.